Right, exotic gear pieces tier list in a YouTuber hom. Right, quick explanation as to why this is separate. When comparing weapons, weapon's purpose, weapon, it does damage. It's kind of self-explanatory, so in order to tier them, or at least how I've done it, is how do they perform overall in terms of Unga Bunga damage. With exotic gear pieces, not so much, because they're there to provide damage buffs, skill buffs, healing buffs, so many other things and so many other variables that they come into play. So putting these in a straight cut tier list is not going to be easy. A good example of this is Memento. If we were to compare Memento in terms of DPS, it's maybe a B tier. It's quite easy to beat, but if we were to compare Memento in terms of survivability, it gets the highest regen stat per singular piece. Obviously, Foundry can get 5 times that amount, but it requires 4 pieces. But for a singular piece, it's the highest amount of armor regen. It provides bonus armor. You get 3 cores, 1 of each. In terms of survivability and what it can perform there, it's clearly an S tier. So this is, obviously it's all my own opinion, but I like to feel that I've got a decent understanding or grip on it. But overall, this is going to be my tier list. So to start off, we're going to go into the comparing them against themselves. So we're just going to pretend only the exotics exist. So it's going to be Memento versus Ninja Bike versus Acosta's. No prizes for guessing which one actually wins here. So let's crack on with it. So this is my tier list. At the bottom we have Shocker Punch with a question mark, simply just because I've not finished my testing on it. I am seeing new things every day where Shocker Punch does have a very weird niche use. But in terms of overall capability and what this holster can actually do for you in your build, not much. So at the moment, I don't want to grade it just because I don't have enough information to make any form of remotely educated decision. Imperial Dynasty, F tier. When your only purpose is to meme and do fuck all, yeah, you get an F. Ridgeway's Pride is D tier. It is very, very handy for proccing ongoing directive. But that's basically it, and once you have ongoing directive, Ridgeway's is kind of null and void, so you might as well just hot swap off it and just keep using the hollow point ammo ongoing directive actually uses. Waveform, this is going to be a large point of argument, I imagine. It is very powerful, it can be pretty good, however, it is just the simple fact of the RNG nature really does hold it back. Even if you go for something that's a bit more static, just like putting in a Wyvern piece, you don't lose that much damage, and that damage is always there, so it kind of gets a pass. Ninja Bite knees, the only real purpose for these is just going to be trying to utilize the backfire without having to build into bleed resist, which is the only reason it's C tier, just because backfire, when you can make use of it, is just absolutely outright damaging. Ninja Bite bag is a weird one. In terms of overall performance, this bag actually doesn't really give you anything. You might as well just put a Fenris piece on and away you go. You can near enough outperform what Ninja Bite bag gives you just by utilizing expertise. However, it can create some absolutely interesting and fun builds, which is going to be the main purpose a lot of people really utilize it for. It is also absolutely amazing on some healer builds, although you do give up some other things. Bloody Knuckles is going to be a pretty standard one. You can get some hefty damage out of it, but in terms of overall performance, it's just lackluster because you've got to jump through a few too many hoops to actually even get the damn thing started. Sawyer's knees are probably the most powerful knees in the game, and in terms of straight up damage, they're actually no joke. The problem is, you have to stand still, which really, really does hold them back. Vial Mask is absolutely top tier, it can do some wondrous things, it's just reliant on you being able to do some form of status. I would love to be able to equip 2 exotics just to get Ridgeways and Vial on the go simultaneously, but other than that, it's kind of hard to fit into any form of build that isn't a status build or can't apply a status. Catharsis is probably the most powerful mask in the game, minus something like Hollow Man, and it certainly beats out Coyotes. The issue is it's not exactly RNG, but it's a constant build up. It's everything on your build relying on Optimist. It's just, you're going to have flat damage, as in low, and then you're going to have high damage. So it kind of counteracts the overall purpose of what the mask is actually trying to do, although the healing on it is amazing. Although for me, the rolls on it just don't make sense. This would instantly be an S tier item if it just had crit chance, crit damage. You can keep the blue core, don't worry about that, but if it had crit chance, crit damage, this would literally be like the most OP mask ever. Acosta's go bag is insanely powerful. I'm always absolutely surprised the amount of people that don't trust in the Acostas. The problem is it's only really useful on things like Oxy builds, as well as builds where you have to buff an individual player, but these are seldom, few and far between, and are often only really utilised by speedrunners. Memento, in terms of just backpacks, considering this is literally a one size fits all, obviously by itself it is an S tier item. It can fit into so many builds. It's not always best on those builds, but it can fit into any build pretty much very comfortably, and it can do some amazing utility things from there. Dodge City Holster is arguably one of the most powerful exotics just ever. It's just so useful in so many different situations. It can just do so much. Coyotes was one that was kind of hard to place just because it doesn't really give you that much overall. Like, it is a boost, don't get me wrong, but it's not that powerful until you run in a coordinated 4-man team, one with FI, 3 people running with the appropriate stats to maintain the appropriate buff from Coyotes, and then suddenly you've got 45% crit chance and 35% critical hit damage along with your overall build. It can do amazing, amazing things. And then finally, BTSU gloves at S tier, just because of that group overcharge. If you need any more explanation on this, then I don't trust you as a human being. Like, BTSU are god. Right, so that's them just being compared to each other. Now we're going to compare them to what is like the meta within the game. So BTSU is going to get compared to Contractors, Seska gloves, Grupo gloves, Walker Harris gloves, all of them. Memento is unfortunately going to be compared to Grupo with Vigilance, The Gift, Seska with Vigilance, etc, etc. So how do they fit in like a tiering area within the meta? So up first, again, Shocker Punch. I've just not done enough testing to make any form of decision on this. I just don't know. Imperial Dynasty is arguably the worst holster in the game. There's really no real reason to run it in any situation. I have had some people say to me that they use it in PvP, so it's like an early warning system, which would be fine if the cooldown was maybe 10% of what it actually is. But I just can't get behind this holster, I'm sorry. Ninja Bite bag, in terms of overall performance and what this can actually offer, it gives you less. Like, there's no real other way to explain it. Like, it is arguably at this point the worst bag in the game, minus for like a single healer build, but then you give up the rights to overcharge with BTSU. Ninja Bite knees are fun, they're interesting, but in terms of overall performance, Seska, Grupo or Fox's Prayer will just give you more, along with the fact that now that we're kind of like in a gear set meta, there's no real room, simply just because things like Coyotes and getting a decent chest or backpack talent kind of exist. Waveform is going to be D tier. It is still very powerful. It's just the RNG of it. Like, if you have no control over it, kind of falls short. I mean, yeah, great, you get like 1.8% more damage while it's active, but I'd rather lose that 1.8% and just have all of my damage active all of the time, so I have it when I need it. Bloody Knuckles are going to be incredibly powerful. However, the whole buff and then reset the cooldown mechanic with punching things, which is utterly useless because punching does no damage. And then you've got to either throw grenades at things, and trying to hit things with grenades is just a nightmare. This would actually be higher up on the list if it was just easier to proc. Maybe a B or even an A tier. Ridgeway's Pride is kind of in a similar sort of vein. Like, the idea behind it is brilliant, and you can get some easy ongoing directive procs with it, but at the same time it's so much easier just to put on a damage talent with like a Seska or Grupo to make up the lack of crit chance or crit damage, and then over there we're able to just put on a skill that would do it for us. Like, it's just so much easier. Like, the overall point of Ridgeway's is kind of redundant at this point, other than obviously going to be in PvP. Sawyer's knees, these are the most powerful knees in the game. Like, they kick the living crap out of Foxes. In terms of like MMR builds and some rifle builds, like focus rifle builds, these knees are best in slot technically. The issue is the standing still, and depending on what difficulty or the faction you're up against, this could be a problem. Like, you don't want to be standing still if there's an outcast rusher beelining to you at 1,000 miles an hour. You don't want to be standing still on a legendary mission when they've all got friggin' grenade launchers or drones. It becomes a problem. Acosta's Go Bag is insanely powerful in terms of like overall performance and power, like on its individual thing that it does. It is the most powerful exotic backpack. The problem is taking it outside of like an Oxy build and some weird and wacky buff builds that it can be utilized with, it's mostly useless. It's incredibly powerful, but incredibly niche. Vile B tier, this is an amazing mask, but it only fits into status builds. You can fit it into other things where you can proc the occasional status. I've seen a lot of people running negotiators with blue screen where Vile actually fits in rather beautifully, rather perfectly in fact, but it's only on builds where you're able to apply a status where this thing even comes into existence. Other than that, it's doing nothing 100% of the time. It's kind of sad. Memento, this might seem a bit confusing, A to D tier, and it's the only A tier item in the game, and the reason behind this is it really does just depend on where you put it, like completely. I would personally argue that if you're going to put it on a skill build, it's A tier. If you're going to put it on a DPS build, it's B tier. If you're going to put it on a tanky build, well, it depends on what you're wanting to do when tanking. So if you're running Foundry, Memento is kind of redundant. Get yourself an Uzina or Gilagar backpack, put Adrenaline Rush on. You're going to get overall, in terms of performance, more armor regen because the Adrenaline Rush is going to cover you to mitigate some of that damage. Now, I'm aware this probably seems like I'm scapegoating myself to try and get out of being like, oh, Memento's shit. I honestly do not think Memento's shit. I do think it is a very good backpack. It's not the best backpack, which is like my entire argument. So hopefully by me saying A to D does kind of situate how this bag kind of does work. It's a very powerful bag. It is very good. But it really does depend on the other supporting elements in the build that you have on it. So I'm kind of hoping this isn't that much of a cop-out, and hopefully you get it. Dodge City Holster is arguably one of the most powerful exotics in the game, especially for solo play. It is absolutely unreal, and is probably one of the few exotics that is genuinely considered to be a meta item. Next up, we have BTSU Gloves, which is the other item that's considered to be a meta item. These are beyond powerful. They can turn your entire team into tanks. They can turn your entire team into gods, DPS geniuses. The overall performance of what BTSU is able to give you and your team when used correctly is just beyond amazing. And finally, Coyote's Mask. Now, this is just slightly above A tier, but not quite in S tier. I don't know why I've got it ordered like this. Coyotes is very, very powerful. It does work very well, but the overall performance of what Coyotes can give you isn't that great, but it is considered to be a best in slot mask. Anyway, have fun, good luck, don't die. It's bad for the health.